Welcome to Success Weekly with James Tharris, a weekly dose of thought-provoking ideas and helpful tips on improving your mindset. And now, here's your host, James Tharris.
Today we're going to talk about energy. Do you have an abundance of energy, or do you feel like you are constantly battling sleepiness and lack of energy and lack of purpose? And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. So if you're feeling constantly tired, you're waking up tired, you're going to bed tired, and you just don't feel like a lot of vim and vigor in your life, really what's going on there is more than likely, now it could be a lot of things, obviously. It certainly could be some medical things as well. But in order to figure out if that's the case or not, here's a kind of a litmus test for you. When was the last vacation you've taken? Okay, can you remember when it was? Was it recent? Where did you go? Do you remember what the 24-hour period leading up to that and the anticipation of taking that vacation was like? More than likely, if you took a vacation to an exotic location, or you took a vacation to Disney World, or you took a vacation to a lake house or some place that you were looking forward to going, then you woke up with lots of energy. In fact, you probably got more accomplished in that 24-hour period leading up to that vacation than maybe in the past 2 or 3 weeks, or maybe 2 or 3 months. And so if that's the case, then, and you're still feeling, when you return from your vacation, you're still feeling a lack of energy and lethargic, then more than likely it's not something that requires medical attention or pharmaceutical assistance. More than likely, the reason that you're feeling the way that you're feeling is because you don't have a purpose, and that's very, very important to your energy. I think that if you look at your life as a whole, the times that you had the most energy were the times that you probably had the most to look forward to, the most purpose. And living a purpose-driven life is very, very important. If you look at people who retire, when they retire from their jobs, oftentimes it isn't very long before those people pass away, especially if they don't have something to put their energy into. So you find a lot of folks that when they retire, they put their energy into gardening, for instance, which then gives them a new purpose. So up until that point where they started gardening full time, they had a purpose. Maybe that was their job or their career, or maybe they were raising their children. That was their purpose. Or maybe raising or helping to raise their grandchildren, and maybe that was their purpose. For grandparents, maybe the one of the spouse's purposes was taking care of the other one, and then when the other one passed away, it left the one behind with a lack of purpose. And that's why a lot of times when one goes, it isn't very long before the other person goes. And so I think the reason I'm telling you all this, I think that a lot of these things, they correlate, and that's the reason why we don't have a lot of energy and don't have a lot of anything to look forward to, because we don't have a purpose. So if that's the case for you right now, and you're feeling really unenergetic and kind of lazy and lethargic and with a lack of purpose, it's very important that you figure out where to come up with a new purpose, how to gain a new purpose. And so that could be the simplest thing is looking inward. What can you do for yourself that you need to be working on? There are probably things in your life right now that could be improved. Make that your purpose if you don't have something else. For me, my purpose from really about the age of 7 up until 47, which is now 40 years, which totally boggles my mind, has been martial arts. Now there were a couple of detours in my life, but very, very short detours. I always came back to, and that's why I call them a detour, because a detour really kind of gets you back on track. If you come to a road where you see that it's closed off, they usually give you a detour, and what the detour does is takes you a roundabout way to get you back on track. And so for me, they weren't distractions. They were nothing less than detours. They were ways for me to kind of to discover and explore other ways and areas of my life and other ways of getting around things so that I could get back on track to my original goal, which was to be a martial artist and to be a teacher and educator and run a martial arts school and be a business person. For me, I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. Looking back at at the choices I made and the positions I held as an employee, even the employee positions I held most oftentimes carried some autonomy with it. So, for instance, when I first started out my very, very, very first job, I remember doing it at 5 or 6 years old. I had a lemonade stand. You don't see a lot of those anymore. But for me, that was a way for me to create something. I got to create the lemonade, and I had to be the person to sell the lemonade. I had to do all the marketing for it. I had no help from my parents except for maybe buying a glass or two of lemonade. But for me, that gave me a purpose. And I was excited about waking up that day or two that I did that and getting started. And did I make a killing during those days? No, but I made a few dollars. And for a 5 or 6 year old kid to make a few dollars, probably from people that felt sorry for me and just thought that it was kind of a cool thing for a kid to be out there selling lemonade, they looked forward to helping that. And it made me feel great. And so that gave me a purpose that day or those particular days. And then the next thing that I can remember doing was shoveling sidewalks from snow and mowing lawns and raking leaves and making money doing that. So again, that was more entrepreneurial thing. And that gave me the purpose was to get up and do something positive with myself and make a little extra money that I could go, shovel quarters into the video game, the arcade machines, or buy some candy from the neighborhood village pantry, or whatever else I wanted to spend my money on. But it gave me that purpose to get up and go fill the lawnmower up with gasoline, or go fill the gas tank up with gasoline, and to check the spark plug and make sure that the lawnmower was clean inside and out and the oil was changed, and all those things. So it gave me something to look forward to. So again, that being an entrepreneur that could become a purpose for you. So again, going along those lines with my entrepreneurship, the next thing that I did as far as work went was I got a paper route. And in fact, I didn't just get one. I started with one, but that quickly I got addicted to that feeling of doing something purposeful. And I got 4 paper routes, two in the morning and 2 in the evening. And then going on from there, just about every job I had kind of had an entrepreneurial feel to it. I remember working as a bagger at Kroger grocery store, and I went from doing that on regular time to doing the night bagger, which was 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., which was pretty much, I worked by myself. It was me and one cashier lady, but then I had to do some additional responsibilities, and I really liked having that lead bagger role, in the evening. And I went from there I went to the produce department in that store and ran the produce department. And so again, I was autonomous, and that gave me a purpose. I really enjoyed those kind of things. And there were a lot of other positions I held, and I remember working for Pizza Hut delivery in the customer service department, where again I was kind of in control of what was going on. I was solving problems for people that had late pizzas, or they ordered the pizza with extra cheese and it didn't come with extra cheese, or they ordered it with tomatoes and it didn't come with tomatoes, or what have you. So I was solving problems. That gave me a purpose. And then, of course, I got started in my martial arts business fairly early as well. But, I mean, looking back at everything I did, I was a disc jockey. So what was I as a disc jockey? I was in charge of entertainment for the evening for other people, and so it gave me a purpose. And so that got me excited about going out and searching out the new music. So I've always had one purpose or another leading me to the next piece, the next stepping stone of my life. And of course, my martial arts training and my martial arts business has given me a tremendous purpose that goes far beyond anything I've ever done before. And that's kind of what's led me here to this podcast, is serving people and waking up with a message and waking up with something to do today. And so that's why I wake up with tremendous energy, and a lot of times I have difficulty going to sleep because I have trouble shutting my mind down. And I have a lot of purpose. And so I found that the times that I've been the least energetic and the most lazy are the times that I've kind of lost my purpose. Things have been taken care of, and the job has been done. So creating my year-end video yearbook for our school has been done. And now I take this big sigh of relief, and then, now what? If I don't have something to look forward to, I lose my energy. So I'm always constantly adding things to my schedule. What's next? What's next? That's the big question for me. So today's podcast is basically about that, and I want you to really think about that today. And it's kind of my call to action for you, is to sit down and think about what is your purpose right now. And so if you don't have a big purpose, as I was mentioning at the beginning of the podcast, maybe start with yourself. Start with putting purpose into getting yourself back into shape, or getting yourself back into a place of health where you're eating healthy and you're looking at the scale and you're trying to drop some pounds. Start with a basic purpose like that, and then build from that purpose and see where it leads you. You just never know. It might lead you to somebody else. It might lead you to somebody else who needs help with something. And the more you can serve other people, the better it is for your energy. I find that whenever I'm serving somebody else and helping them with a project, or helping them create something, or helping them, with a challenge, trying to overcome a problem, or whatever, that gives me tremendous energy, because I have a purpose, and my purpose is helping somebody else. So, start with the simplest things and see where it leads you, and that might be what happens to you. You might find an additional purpose out of that original purpose. And so that's very, very powerful. So if you're struggling with energy, I challenge you to figure out why that is, and figure out if you've got a purpose and what your purpose is. And if you don't have a purpose and you can't discover what it is, start with something very small, make that your purpose, and then build from there. And I hate to keep repeating myself, but that's really what it comes down to. More energy comes from having a purpose, having a passion. What is your passion? For me, my passion is, I've got several passions. Of course, martial arts was probably my very first passion. I love to entertain as well. I love to tell jokes and get laughs, although a lot of my jokes don't end up in laughs. Again, this is the funny part, when I purposely try to be funny, I find that I'm less funny. I find that when I'm in the moment and I'm just being myself, and I'm discussing my experiences and just flowing with it, that's when I'm at my funniest. That's when I find that I get the most laughs, when I just talk about what's going on in my life and discuss it from a perspective of how I think about it, instead of trying to sit down and come up with something that I think is funny. So for me, I like to entertain, and I like to get laughs. I love to speak. I love to orate. I love to talk about things that matter, and I love to really, one of my passions is connecting the dots, seeing how everything fits with everything else. That's probably my most recent passion. I've been doing it my whole life, but I've come to the realization in the past maybe 5 years or so that that's really my gifting, is being able to connect the dots between these things and that thing and this thing and the other thing. So a lot of times when I see somebody, the very first thing I'm trying to do is to figure out who that person looks like, or who that person reminds me of. I mean, my mind just goes right to that. And actually, I've learned to enjoy that process. And I might spend 5 minutes. It might come to him immediately. I might spend 5 minutes, or I might spend 5 days until I can finally figure out who that person reminds me of and who they look like. And then, again, that's kind of the metaphorical side of the martial arts, the philosophical side of the martial arts, being able to create analogies that help students understand particular techniques and why they work and why they might not work, and some of the mistakes they might be making in their training and how that applies to other areas in their lives, such as their home life, their homework, their schoolwork, their relationships with other people, their relationships with themselves, and being able to connect those dots and get them to realize that, hey, success principles are the same in anything and everything, and they kind of connect every single area of your life. And so that's why if you look at successful people, whether they're sports people or business people or religious people, or I'm trying to think of a lot of different types of things, but I think you get the idea. If you look at all those different kinds of scholastic success, you're going to find that a lot of their habits are the same. A lot of the way that they look at things and the way that they look at challenges are the same. The way that they view problems in the world. and the way that they attack problems in the world. You're going to find that a lot of them get up earlier, a lot of them stay up later, a lot of them find that creative time for them might be at 2 o'clock in the morning. And if they learn to recognize that and learn to tap into that, that they can really make huge strides in themselves. And so that's the idea, is learning to identify those successful habits and traits. And so for me, that's what I've been able to do for pretty much my whole life. But really over the past 5 years, it's become a huge passion of mine, learning how to look for connecting of the dots, how one thing relates to the other thing, and how languages relate, for instance, and how closely related English is to Spanish, and how Spanish is closely related to Greek language, and how both of those languages are related to the Latin language, and so on and so forth. I mean, it can really dig a hole, a really deep hole, and go down a rabbit hole with those kind of things. But for me, that's a passion, that's a purpose. And so again, I'm telling you these things because you jump from one purpose to the next purpose to the next purpose and to the next purpose, and then when you find yourself lacking a purpose, well, that's when things kind of come to an end. That's when we kind of get off of our diets and we get off of our exercise programs because we've lost our purpose. We've lost the reason why we started doing those things in the first place. And maybe the reason we started doing those things in the first place, we've kind of gotten that reason accomplished, and now we don't have another reason behind it, so there's no compelling reason to keep doing the diet or exercise or going to that class or whatever it is. And so that's why it's so important to continue to find the next purpose and ask, what's next? What's next? What's next? And as we get close to the achievement of that goal, what's next? Constantly resetting our goals. I think that if we could, now that I really think about that, if we could really continue those purposes along, that might be the key to immortality. Who knows? It might be that people that live the longest lives come up with that purpose and just repurpose themselves over and over and over again. I mean, if you look at like artists, like Madonna, for instance, how many different times has she recreated herself since she started in the early 80s? I mean, the woman is like still going strong. And, there's very few people, young and old alike, that don't know who Madonna is. And Prince was like that until he died. And Michael Jackson was like that until he died. And I'll have to come back to this in a little bit. Okay, so I had a little interruption there with a conference call that I had to take. So I'm back now. And we're talking about, energy, your energy levels and how it relates to having a purpose in life. And so I've got a special guest here that just popped in, the Mrs. Theris here. So I want to just kind of ask you about your thought process, because if there's anybody that I've ever met in my entire life that has energy, it's this woman. This woman's got like abundant energy like you would not believe. Her favorite phrase in the world is choppa, 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 because she just can't sit still and allow things to wait. She's got to have them happen right now, right here, right now. She was able to, I think we did 3 different moves. One was our school the first time, one was our school the second time, and one was our house, all in a weekend time. These were things that would take anybody else probably a month to do. The fourth one, we moved my father out of the house into his own place in probably a couple hours, right? So, I mean, if anybody can tell you about having a purpose and how it relates to having energy, it would be Mrs. Theris. So what are your thoughts on people that have low energy, don't have any energy, and maybe how that applies to, not having a purpose in life?
I don't like to be around them. I go around people that have low energy and they just try to suck my energy away. I think when you have a purpose and you've got excitement and energy behind it, and choppa choppa, we got stuff to do, right? There's stuff to be done. So much more gets done. It's more efficient. You feel better, and oh my goodness, it's like, in the Marine Corps, they say, we do more, before most, in one day or in the morning before most people even wake up, type of a thought process. Right. And I don't think that's ever left me. I think when there's something to do, I get energized because, wow, there's a purpose. I have something to do. Just like yesterday when I had that closet that had to get cleaned out so we can demolish the wall.
And for
And
those of you listening, we're doing some reconstruction in our school. We just put up a wall that separates the training floor from the lobby area, and doing so created a little bit of a bottleneck in the back area of the school because there was another wall that was kind of protruding, and so that's the wall she's talking about.
so I went in. I mean, there was a lot of stuff in there. And, I was able to not just clear it out and put it into my office, but be able to get my office back in working order so that they could come in, do the demo, but my office was still functional in 2 hours or less.
Good. So do you find a correlation then with having energy and relating that to having a purpose?
Absolutely. If even if you have no energy, if I would have went in there and I didn't have the purpose of emptying this out, and I didn't have the energy, and I went in all sluggish, it would have taken me all day. And I would have fussed about it and complained and, oh, this is stupid. What am I supposed to do with all this stuff? And instead, there was a purpose, there was a lot of energy. And like you said, it's choppa choppa, let's make this happen, let's rock it out, and, be rock stars, make it happen.
All right. Well, that's about all we have for today. Today is all about energy and purpose. And, I'm going to charge you one more time. If you don't have any energy, maybe you don't have any purpose right now. And you've got to figure out what your purpose is. You've got to find out how you're going to approach that. So again, I like to start with the very simple things. I'm a simple person. I'm not a very complex person at all. I like steak and potatoes. I could eat that 3 times a day. Of course, I don't, but I certainly could. I like solid colors on my clothes. I don't like a lot of crazy, wacky color coordination designs. I'm pretty black and white as far as color coordination goes together. And, I like to keep things simple. So for me, having a simple thing to focus on gives me lots of extra energy because I've got a reason to get up in the morning. And, again, another one of my purposes was writing a book. I've written, 4 books now. And when I have that purpose on my mind, I want to complete this book. And I've got one that I'm in the process of writing now, but I've lost my motivation on it because I thought I had it finished. I thought I had it completed, and I thought I had a masterpiece on my hands. And when I went back and read it, and I had a couple of other people read it, I realized, this has got a lot more work to do to it. And so I lost my motivation to write that book. So that's going to become my purpose again someday. So I've got something that's already been started that I've put on the back burner that I could immediately pick up and repurpose myself if I needed to get that extra charge of energy. And so having things like that I think are important, very highly important to your overall well-being. So if you're not finding yourself having enough energy, don't just go out and reach for the Red Bull or the caffeine and coffee and things like that. Those can be helpful in some instances, and occasionally, having a Red Bull right before I get started writing might help. It helps to supercharge my thinking and gives me that little extra burst of energy I need to accomplish extra tasks. But it's not something I'd want to do every day. Does that make sense? But just having that purpose is what really gets me kicked into gear in the morning. So if I know that in the morning that I'm going to be filming a video of a special workout that I want to post up in my Facebook group for my students, well, that's a purpose that I look forward to and gets me to wake up in the morning and gets my wife to wake up in the morning and gets us going because we've got this stupid little video we're going to shoot that's going to probably take 10 minutes and it's going to take us more time to set up for it than it is to shoot it, but it's creating value. So I get energy and purpose from being creative. Anything I can do to be creative. If I can create something, I am all about it. And I've got abundant energy for days and weeks and months and sometimes years, if that's what it takes, to be in that creative mode. So I find that the times that I'm least creative are the times that I'm the least energetic. So that's my charge to you. Find something to get creative with. Find something to put a purpose into. And if you don't have anything, start with your health. Start with your fitness. And those are great starting points because I'll tell you, when you get those 2 things under control, everything else kind of seems to fall into place. When I find that when I'm best at writing is when I'm exercising, when I'm working, when I'm eating right, and when I'm focused on dropping that extra 5 pounds, and I hop on the scale, and my immediate purpose is to get that scale to go from 175 to 174, from 174 to 173, and then I try to do what I can to see if I can make a big jump to get to 171, and then when I can break the 170 mark, then try. So that's a purpose, even as simplistic as that sounds. But if you don't have a purpose, maybe that's the place for you to start, is to start with the scale. Hop on the scale and see what you weigh today, and then make it your purpose to drop 5 pounds in let's say the next month. Don't make it something that's too hard to do, something that can be done in little increments. And I'll tell you, you'll be amazed at how much more energy you have when you find that purpose. So that's all we have for today. I'll see you next week.
That's all for this week. Tune in next week for another episode of Success Weekly. Do you have an idea you'd like James to talk about in an upcoming episode? Post your comments and be sure to share this podcast with friends.